Great. Well, thank you all so much for joining. We'll record this so then we can share it on the Eventbrite page. But first of all, we're so excited that you're interested and going to join our hackathon. I'm Kaylee Wetzig. I'm the Cloud Community Marketing Manager. And we have Dan Barkus, who's with us from Developer Relations. He's going to talk to you about Graph and why he got into it. And then also we have someone from Plotly, Rob Calvin, and he's going to also talk to you about Plotly and what he got in, why he got into software engineering and different types of jobs that you guys can do. So they're going to go through and talk to you, and then, feel free to ask questions. We want this to be fun and interactive. And if you have any questions specific to the hackathon, definitely let us know. So I'll let Dan go ahead and kick this off. And thanks again for everyone that's here and participating. And at the end of this, we'll tell you who won the raffle. So thanks again.
Great, thank you, Kaylee. So I'm Dan Barkus. Like Kaylee said, I'm a developer advocate here at TigerGraph. So the main sort of responsibility of that role is helping people learn TigerGraph, building out tools to help people integrate TigerGraph with other things, and in general, just trying to make it an easier product for the general community and developers to use. But I didn't always work at TigerGraph. I actually started using TigerGraph at my last job. I used to work for Optum, which is a large healthcare tech company. So we did a lot of work around health insurance claims and that type of field. So my first TigerGraph project actually came from a pretty neat experience. We were looking to combine two extremely large data sets and look at kind of how they affected each other. So immediately that kind of was a graph problem. That's what Graph accelerates at, is taking these disparate data sources and combining them together to see what is really possible from it. So we were looking at, we had this program where people can log in with like their Fitbit or whatever, and it will give you money back based on how many steps you've taken per day. So per day, you could get up to $3 back based on how active you were. And then we had a bunch of healthcare claims. So when people go to the doctor, what they go for, what their visits are. And we wanted to see if people who are more active are actually have a lower impact on the healthcare system, if they need less claims, if they have fewer injuries, things like that. So this was kind of the perfect graph use case to be able to bring all this data together and look at it with a holistic view instead of these two disparate data sources, which realistically, before just hadn't even been connected or even thought about being connected. They were in two separate data lakes and everything else. So by being able to drag them into TigerGraph, it was really cool to see we found so many things that we weren't even looking for. And that honestly is my favorite part about Graph, is that by tying these things together, you just don't know what you're going to find. There's so much more value that you can get by combining two data sets than just by looking at each one individually. Like as soon as you start to look at them holistically, we were able to see things like, a person was still logging 15,000 steps every day, even though they were in the hospital for the last 9 days for open heart surgery. There's something up with that. That shouldn't be happening. That's something that we wouldn't have noticed before if it weren't for that ability to look at these two data sets together and to realistically compare that type of thing. So as far as that goes, though, from, I guess, transitioning away from like a traditional database or a SQL type workflow, I'm not classically trained in computer engineering. I went to film school realistically, so I've been a software engineer the past 5 years or so, but I didn't have really any of that database experience going into when I first started using TigerGraph. I built like my first SQL server and written, baby's first queries and things like that. But as far as like a proper database experience, TigerGraph was really kind of the first big thing for me. And the ability to learn it, it's something that it's a lot. I will say it's more challenging to learn the concept than it is to learn the actual software. So like the concept of graph and when you should be connecting things to each other and how they should connect and what those relationships are is really the kind of the value that graph offers, that critical thinking that's required to sort of understand your problem and how your different pieces of data relate to each other. Because once you have that in your head, it's just so easy to bring it into Graph Studio and build your schema out. And then from there, just start exploring with queries or even just exploring through the data on its own. So that's, I guess, for me, it was kind of this whole like throw everything you know kind of out the window, but also keep it dangling there, because it's just, you need kind of the basic idea of what your joins were doing or what your basic SQL query syntax was. But other than that, you're dealing with a completely different, much more powerful beast. And it's really cool just to sort of see how quickly you can go from just understanding your data to now being able to explore things that you never thought that you would have been able to explore before. So I'm a huge proponent for TigerGraph, not just because I work here. Obviously, I work here now because I enjoyed the product so much, and because I believe in the power of it, and I've seen firsthand the ability that it provides to really fully understand combined data set and things like that. So definitely think that it's a great opportunity and a great product to definitely try and jump around in, and just graph technology in general, just whatever graph you want to use. Doesn't have to be TigerGraph. I just highly recommend that you get out there and start exploring the way that you can combine these data sets, and understanding kind of the philosophy between when and how to join these things together.
Thanks, Dan, so much. A few other things, though. You've been working on some really cool graph projects in the background. I know you want to do some interesting things with self-driving cars and other types of things. So can you tell everyone on the call just some of the cool projects that you've been building in addition to what you just talked about?
Yeah, definitely. So graph is obviously not just limited to the things that I talked about and combining these data sets, but one of the cool things that you can do with it is graph is really a great enhancer for machine learning. I guess enhancer is probably not the right word, but you load your data into the graph, and then from there you can run graph queries to generate additional features to train on. So based off of these connections between your nodes and things like that, these things that might have been, these relationships that would have been harder to capture where everything just in a flat table format, are now much easier to capture with TigerGraph queries. You can include that data now onto each vertex, onto each piece of data. You've essentially created additional data based off of your original data, and now you can use that to enrich a machine learning model. So it's really cool to be able to take that data, run these graph enhancements on it directly within the graph database, and then output that to a machine learning model to allow it to be much more accurate or to gain additional features. But otherwise, yeah, I've been doing some stuff very recently with IoT. So looking at just a plethora of sensors and kind of this concept of hyper-local sensing. Things like, instead of, back in the day, we had your climate control for like a building is the entire floor. You go to the office and the whole floor is freezing cold. And nowadays, as newer structures are being built with the idea of efficiency in mind, there's much more local climate control. So if there's no one in this room, then we're not going to turn on the AC, things like that. So I'm taking this idea of hyperlocal sensing, looking at things like light, temperature, and humidity, not just in a particular room, but across the room. So as the sun moves across the room and the sunlight heats up the floor and the rest of the room, how does that heat dissipate? How does that all travel across the room? And how can we design more efficient systems based on that knowledge? So this is all being done with TigerGraph, and with these IoT devices are just inserting data straight into TigerGraph. And then we're able to run some pretty cool queries on top of that to gain some insights about the propagation of energy, heat energy, more or less, throughout a room based on these different factors. Additionally, we're touching all sorts of fields. So supply chain management is one of the huge graph database use cases. Companies have, obviously supply chains are these huge complex structures. You have suppliers building parts. Those parts get put into components. Those components get into, your final product. You have different tiers of your final product that are going to have different components in them. So you need to keep track of all this stuff. What is the demand for a particular version of a product, and what are all the downstream components that relies on? Something like that is just huge to keep track of otherwise. But when you pull that into graph, all those connections are natively there. Component has parts made by manufacturer, supplied by supplier, and you can keep track of that whole supply chain management directly in one place. And you can easily see, if this supplier isn't able to provide this much demand, what is that going to affect downstream? A lot of use cases as well around kind of user journey. So as someone interacts with a website or with a service, what are the steps that they take? How do those steps differ from person to person? What actions result from different steps? And being able to sort of combine those connections of person did this, then they did this, and this was the resulting action, and being able to essentially say, given X example person, how do we think that they're going to react to our website based on the past experiences of everyone else who's reacted to it? So these are really just kind of skimming the surface of a lot of the great things. But fraud detection, another big one, kind of alluded to that with the detection of people putting in 15,000 steps while in a hospital bed. But obviously it extends out to financial use cases and more financial-based data and things like that as well. So lots of very cool opportunities and things that value that graph databases bring to the table.
Thank you, Dan. And I'll just ask one more question, then we'll transition to Rob so we have time for everybody's questions. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you got started with TigerGraph? So put yourself in everybody's shoes. They have this hackathon. It's just basically an introduction to Graph and Plotly. So we're trying to make it a way that you can get to know how to use both technologies quickly. But can you tell them kind of from your perspective, how would you suggest they get started?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm very much a self-learner. Like I said, I'm not classically trained in, computer engineering. Or everything I've learned, I've kind of taught myself or had other people show me. So when I first picked up TigerGraph, it was a couple of years ago, and there was nowhere near as much content as we have now about learning it. But I just jumped into it. I jumped into the TigerGraph community site. I looked up a couple of YouTube videos on just like intro to TigerGraph or how to use TigerGraph, things like that. The documentation is fantastic. It's very thorough, and it's only improved over the years. There are definitely some shoddy parts when I first started using it, but now it's extremely solid, and the documentation is pretty much my go-to when I have a question or something that isn't working the way that I think it should be in TigerGraph. It's just docs.tigergraph.com. Type it in the search bar, and I've usually got my answer within a good minute or two. So yeah, there are a lot of great resources out there. We've been really trying to ramp that up recently in terms of intro to TigerGraph, things like that. I believe we have a whole course on using TigerGraph with Plotly Dash, which is a fantastic jumping off point for something like this. So I highly recommend you check that out. I don't know if we can drop that link in the chat or something like that, or if we even supplied that with the material here, but yeah, so for me, it was a lot of the internet, community.tigergraph.com are our community forums, and that is an extremely useful place to get answers. I will say we do have people watching like Stack Exchange and stuff like that, but TigerGraph just we haven't become a popular community there yet, I guess is what I'm saying. So for most of your questions, community.tigergraph.com, or even posting within our developer Discord server. We are extremely active there. I've got it open up on another monitor right now. I would see your questions if you were to post them, and I would gladly answer them. So yeah, really just the internet, I guess, is my answer there, unfortunately. But if you've gotten this far in a computer science career, you know how to Google things, and you can definitely find plenty of resources to help you out with TigerGraph.
Thank you so much. And I posted in the chat the Eventbrite, and that has everything you need to know with our community, how to join TigerGraph's community. If you have questions, we have our Discord. We also have a hackathon hashtag. So if you guys want to find teams, if you haven't built one yet and want to kind of ask questions there, we're actively watching it, as well as Plotly's community too. We have that link, and then all the videos on how to get started. So thank you so much, Dan. And I'm going to now transition to Rob, and Rob is with Plotly Dash, and he's going to talk to you about what his background and just everything. I kind of left it open-ended for him. So I'll let him get started, and then afterwards, if you guys have any questions, we'll stay on. You can ask directly in the chat, but then we'll open it up too. So go ahead, Rob. Thank you again for joining.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Kaylee. So nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Rob Calvin. I am a senior sales engineer with Plotly. And what that means on the day-to-day is I spend about half my day developing Python web applications using the software that we build, and the other half of my day doing the sales component, which is myself, the engineer, talking to other engineers at technical companies. So the sales engineering role is somewhere between sales and engineering. It's pretty literal. And that's what I do at Plotly. It's a real pleasure to be here and speak with you all today to talk about Plotly, the company, some of the tech that we build, and then my personal path in the data science world. So to start off with, Plotly, the company. Plotly is a Canadian-based software company that builds open source and closed source technology and data visualization tools. Now, these data visualization tools that we build have tons of different use cases. There are millions, about 10 million monthly downloads of our open source software right now. Everyone from a Comp Sci 101 student trying to build their first bar chart, line chart in code, moving from the Excel worlds, all the way to data scientists at Fortune 100 companies trying to visualize the airflow over an F1 spoiler. All those fit within the category of what you can do within the Plotly charting ecosystem. More recently, I was just working on an application for one of the banks in the United States where they're like a web application to allow an analyst to detect credit card fraud from all their credit card transactions. That's a wonderful use case to visualize where those transactions are happening, allow an analyst to filter through, run some math on it, and enable the business user to run really fancy math coded up by the data scientist. Now, at Plotly, we developed two primary tools. One is the Plotly graphing library, and then the other one is the Dash web application framework. The Plotly graphing library is quickly becoming the default visualization library within the Plotly, or say the Python ecosystem. It's used for, as I was mentioning, bar charts, line charts, all the way down to three-dimensional scatter plots, mapping technologies, anything that you can think of you can do with the graph. The Plotly charting library is definitely there for you. And then the other component that we build is the Dash web application framework, which is there to build full stack analytical applications in your data science language of choice. Now, typically that's Python, but also there is support for R, Julia, MATLAB, F#.NET, and other languages. But Python, being as popular as it is far and away the most popular of the tools that we build. Now, the goal of Dash is to empower you, the soon-to-be data scientist, to do your data extraction, read in a CSV in its simplest form, and then your data manipulation, your filtering, then run some fancy math on that. That could be a ++1, or that could be a machine learning model, and then allow you to build code so that others who are non-technical can still interact with your work, your models, your code via a URL rather than having to run code themselves. So we're looking to get data science out of the data science lab and into the business as best as possible, give data scientists the front stage that they deserve within the company. Now, on that note, data science is a pretty crazy industry to be in these days. There's a lot of innovation happening there. And my personal favorite thing about being within the data science world is how it's completely agnostic to industry, where if you have the tools and the skill set, you can work at just about any company in any vertical. If you want to be working in finance, being a Python dev with some data skills, you can absolutely do that with Plotly and Graph. If you want to be in machine learning or maybe sports analytics, data science, you can get there. So one of the best parts about data science is just the ability to work wherever you'd like. Now, my personal path to get to where I am today in the data science world with Plotly and graphing and visualization, much like Daniel, I do not have a typical traditional software or even scientific background. I took a business undergrad with the expectation of becoming an accountant. Now, turns out accounting was never my passion, and what I became a lot more interested in was the ability to build something using software. And then from there, I picked up a number of skills. One of them was data viz, and that led me to the Plotly world. Now, one of the things, in my opinion, that makes coding and software such an amazing industry is that you can learn everything on your own. There is no body that regulates who can do what. You're completely free to learn and produce as best you see fit. All it takes is some initiative, and in my case, a lot of help. I am not the king of self-learning. I'd like to ask questions. And luckily, most people in the software world are happy to answer those questions. So in my experience of becoming a competent coder, there was definitely a lot of bad times where I'd be stuck on an issue for a day, a week, a month. But eventually things start to make sense. They start to demystify technologies, and watching something go from complete magic to a really understandable concept where you can go in and change and edit the code and make it do what you want is a really, really empowering feeling, and something that I definitely it makes me more excited to code every day. So I encourage, everyone here today to keep improving your coding skill sets, learn industry relevant tools like TigerGraph and like Plotly, and then find things that interest you. And then from there, the world's your oyster. There are tons of opportunities, especially right now in the data science world. And it's totally up to you to find them and seek them out.
Great.
That's all I got to say.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I think one more quick question, and I can go ahead on our side, but can you tell the students how they can get maybe a job with Plotly, or like how do you guys do internships? Like what types of things can you tell them? You're maybe not in recruiting, but just if you, with your customers, just kind of, are you guys opening any jobs right now? Like they probably are not ready yet, but just, yeah, go ahead and tell us about that too.
Absolutely. So on a macro level, data science and coding in general is hiring. So it is a great time to be coming out of undergrad or coming out of university or just looking for a job. So good news for everyone here today. On a smaller level, Dash and what we're building is for the advanced scientists, but we're also looking to lower the barrier of entry of who can code up nice things. You do not need to be a 10 out of 10 developer to build with our tools. You need to be a 1 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10. And that is a totally appropriate skill set for someone just coming out of university or even people doing co-ops. In the past, Plotly, the company, used to hire about 20 or 30 co-op students, and they would come in, learn the software within a couple weeks, and then their goal would be to code up as many applications as they could, and we would use those for industry-specific uses. So for example, we would hire people from the science department, people from the business department, people from the coding departments, and then have them build industry relevant applications. And that is something that we still do today. The best way to get a job with Plotly is, since our software is open source, install it, deploy or build something cool, deploy it, and share it with us. And then that's directly foot in the door. And that is something you can absolutely do on your own, and you could even do today. The next step is, within Plotly, we have a more typical software engineering world where you have a couple different products that you're building and maintaining, and that's a very structured environment. And we also have a consulting arm where companies who don't necessarily have all of the Python skill sets that they need will hire us and our internal experts to code up their applications for you. That's more of a 2-week to 4-week engagement time where you get to work with companies like Apple and Shell and any company in the world realistically. So for internally, if you're looking to get into data science and data visualization out of undergrad, this consulting role with what's called our services arm is where we mostly hire people with 1 to 5 years experience, or 0 to 5 years experience. This is definitely an entry-level role.
That's great. Thank you. And yeah, we have internships too that are sometimes open, and we have a few right now, but we also have been hiring a lot of people in our developer community. So just get involved on our end, and then, let us know as things come along. And I'm gonna, Dan, do you have anything else to say before we open this up for any questions?
I guess one thing I just want to stress the importance of a dashboard for anything you're building. And I think that Plotly Dash is kind of a huge breakthrough here. At my last company, I worked on an R&D team, and we built a lot of like cutting edge things. And we would often build something out, and it wouldn't really have a front end. We just kind of have, here's this block of code that runs, and it runs this machine learning model, and here's this output. And you'd go to demo that to someone, and they just kind of be like, oh, that's neat, like, good job. But then you come back a week later with the exact same demo that you've slapped a front end on. You've got a nice web page where they can click a drop down instead of having to type something in a box. They get an output with a graph on it, and they're ecstatic about it. You showed them essentially exactly the same thing, but you just put this polished front end on it. And all of a sudden it's quadrupled in value, the work that you've done. And, I only recently started using Plotly Dash, but I built a demo in a couple of days with it, and it was fantastic. It was just, here's my graph, here's my query. Before I had just a JSON output from my query, and it was, oh, big old block of text, what's that mean to me? But now you bring it into a Dash, and boom, you've got a chart that generates from it, and you've got the ability to visualize your data. And suddenly it just has all of the value in the world, instead of just, here's a text file that someone's gonna fall asleep reading. So it's really that final polish that's just so important when building out a lot of these things. And the availability of tools like Plotly Dash or other front-end frameworks that make it just so easy for you to spin something up in a couple of hours that looks very professional and that integrates with your, whatever you're building. It's just so extremely important whenever you're building out a project. It's really worth putting down that time to ensure that you build out a front end, a way to engage with the actual thing that you're building instead of just, a script that outputs a text file or whatever.
Thanks so much. Well, I'm going to pause here. Does anybody have any questions specific about Plotly or TigerGraph? Anything about the hackathon? Are you all just waiting for the who won the raffle? That could be it.
Hey, so what's the details of the hackathon? How's it going to take place?
Yeah, so great question. So here it is. So what we're going to do is we're doing it virtually, but that was another exciting announcement. We're going to reveal the prizes and the winners on campus if you guys feel comfortable with pizza. And Dan might even print some trophies with his incredible 3D printer. So, but the challenge is here. So we're going to have you guys either use one of the starter kits that we listed, or you can build your own and then use Plotly Dash. And then also here's kind of the prize category above and beyond, best graph, early submission. So the first 50 that already registered, you get 100 TigerGraph Cloud credits. So if you haven't emailed me yet, I sent an email to get the email you used for TigerGraph Cloud. So then I can award you the $100, let me know. And then what you'll do is you'll build it. Here's the information. Here's kind of the judging criteria. And then when you're done, you'll submit it in this form. So we have it in a Google Doc that basically you'll put your email, you put the name of your team, like who's the team lead, the person that we're going to stay in contact with, plus everybody else on your team, the title of your graph, the description, and then we want you to make a video of it. So you'll go through and walk us through how it works, and just you can also watch this. So these two students go to Northeastern and they won our last web app hackathon. So you can watch what they did. And then we have about 10 other examples too on this dev post. And then also we want you to document your solution. So did that answer your question?
Yes. What other resources do we need in order to code up the graph? Do we just need TigerGraph?
Yeah, TigerGraph and Plotly Dash. And so you automatically get $25 of TigerGraph Cloud credits. So you'll just log in you'll create a TigerGraph Cloud account here.
Okay.
And then from there, you'll register. Again, let us know your email so we can give you the credits. And then also you'll just create a Plotly Dash account too. And then we have everything here that you need to get started. So it's no money on your end. Just the only other resource you need is your creativity.
Okay. So, how do we let you know the email?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
How do we let you know what email we're how do we get the credits again?
So just email me back from one of those emails I sent you the Eventbrite. I also set up a spreadsheet that I'll put in the chat before we're done. So you guys have that too, and then we can register that. But you don't need the 100 credits to get started because you get free $25 of credits. And
okay.
And also too, we want this to be fun for you guys and we want you to feel like we're setting you up for success. So if you guys want to do another session like this, we can extend the hackathon deadline. And if you guys have any other questions, like you want Dan or Rob to go through any specific questions, if once you get started, we can do that too. So just let us know. We want you guys to have fun. We want it to be kind of a community thing that you feel like if you guys all need time to learn it more or something, then we can extend the deadline. Just let us know and we're happy to do that.
Okay, last question. What's the deadline?
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, it's the 29th. So it's 9 days from now. But if you guys want longer, again, we can extend it. We just, do you guys want us to extend it? We can extend it by a week or two if you want.
I don't know yet. I haven't started.
Okay, well, yeah, as it comes along, if you guys want us to extend it, we're happy to do so. Let me pull up the list for you. And then do you guys have any other questions?
Hey, Kaylee, I just had a brief question.
Mhm.
So I actually, and this probably goes out to everyone. I was actually wondering, so, I've recently gotten a lot of experience with things like AWS and SQL server, a workbench, SQLite, the common popular relational databases. I was actually curious to know what in your opinion are some of the fundamental differences between TigerGraph and Plotly versus I guess in my case what I'm used to.
Yeah, and Dan does a really good job of doing an introduction and he compares all of them. So I'll let him take this if that's okay.
Yeah, I can take that. One more thing I want to add before is, even though we do give you $25 worth of credits, there is, you get a free instance with TigerGraph Cloud. So you can go in there, you just set up a free instance and it will always be free. You'll never have to worry about spending any money on it. It will occasionally, after I think 3 hours of inactivity, so 3 hours of not using it, it will shut itself down, but you just have to go back into TigerGraph Cloud and say, start, and then it'll come back up. So that's just cost saving thing, but it is entirely free. So you can just spin up a free tier instance and use that without having to worry about going through those credits or anything like that. But in terms of the difference from like a traditional SQL database, I guess the main way to think about it, or the way that people seem to grasp the most when I try to explain it, is that SQL, you do your joins at query time, right? So your joins, you write your query that may have your joins, and that's going to cause an impact on your query performance. Whereas with graph databases, those joins are part of the schema. So instead of having to write these complex queries with these joins, your joins are pre-calculated when you load in the data. So now you can traverse, you could traverse what would be equivalent to 4, 5, 7 tables in a SQL database. You can traverse that in, tenths of milliseconds with a graph query traversal. So we were doing things like, when I was working on the healthcare stuff, I had 300,000 people loaded into Graph with probably a total of 2.5 million doctor's visits between them. And I was able to look at those people, those doctor visits, the contents of those doctor's visits, and there's these things called ICD codes, which basically describe what you went to a doctor or whatever for, things like a broken arm or whatever. I was able to go from the person out to all of their visits, out to those codes that describe those visits, take the list of those codes and compare them across every single of those 300,000 individuals. And that was able to run in about 4 seconds. So it's things like that you just wouldn't be able to do that in a SQL database, or at least nowhere near that sort of performance scale. Because things like those types of joins and having to calculate those out as you're running and doing everything is just extremely slow. And additionally, with TigerGraph, all of your nodes and connections between them are stored directly in memory. So anytime that you're doing one of those traversals, navigating between 2 nodes, that's entirely in memory, and it's extremely fast and efficient as well. So it's a lot of the advantage of Graph over SQL is if you have these large, complex data sets where there are relations between them, then it is just significantly faster and easier to query and find those relations and traverse along them than it would be to do that within a SQL or standard relational structure.
Yeah, and one of the other things too is you don't have to keep building all the complex joins to find the relationships with the graph. You're able to just connect them all together. So that's one of the other advantages. And I'm glad you brought up AWS and some of the other cloud vendors, because we have some other content and how you can combine like SageMaker, BigQuery, Vertex AI, and really create a real complex, more robust solution. But right now we just wanted to get your feet wet with these 2 different products. So did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely it did. And actually, yeah, so we actually did touch upon key value and graph databases. We haven't dived in too much into them, but it'll definitely be interesting to kind of learn and actually have some practical experience using them. So I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Okay.
I,
Yeah.
I actually, sorry, Kaylee, I actually do need to hop off, but I was actually wondering if this is recorded and, will be sent to us if we want to refer to it later.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll share it with you. And which course was it that you got exposure a little bit to graph?
Yeah, so well, not too much. We learned about it and we read about it, but not much practical experience. So it was just database management systems, basically. That was the course.
Okay.
CS 5200 if you're interested.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys so much. I know you want to, you got to go. So the winner of the $100, I put them in and pulled it out, is Priyal Patel. So we'll send that to you, but just remember, everybody has the chance to win the $500. We have 2 chances to win $500. So I'm going to see if we have anything else. How do you form groups? We can either do it in a Discord chat, or if you guys want to reach out, I can send an email out for everybody to see who registered. And then you can make a list that way and reach out. Or like I said, we can do the Discord group. So I'll do a follow-up email with this video and all the information. And if you guys want us to help you find a group too, just reach out. So does anybody else have questions? And if you have to drop, you can, or we can make teams here. So
Yeah, I had a quick question. Sorry if this is like a repeat question, but I was watching all the intro videos that were given to us of the examples of Plotly and TigerGraph. And I noticed that if we use one of the starter kits, kind of the data is already made for us, right? And then we just kind of have to follow the steps. And I was wondering how we can like get creative with it, I guess is my confusion.
Yeah. So one of the great things about that data being there and everything is it provides a great starting point, but any of the starter kits can be modified. You could modify that schema. You could bring in an additional data set to augment it. You could generate your own fake data if you just wanted something for the purpose of giving a cool demo. So something like, we have a movie recommendation data set, which is our movie rating. It's pulled from IMDb. It's users' ratings of movies. You could then pull in another data set, like maybe a Wikipedia data set for the movie, and you could then get the actors that are in that movie. So now you could tie these movies together by their ratings and their actors. Maybe you could do something where you try and predict what rating a movie would get if it was of a certain genre with certain actors in it. All that data is there, the genre of the movies, the actors who are in it, the ratings of the movies. So if we were to pick, these 4 random people and put them in a spaghetti Western, what's the likelihood? What's, going to be the average rating of that based on the data that we have? So there's definitely opportunities to expand upon those starter kits. And I think those starter kits are a great starting point for just looking at how everything kind of fits together, how things are arranged, what some samples queries look like. And then you can either, you can just use them as a learning experience to get that idea of and then scrap it and start over, or you can kind of use it as a building block to then add additional bits onto the schema or bring in additional data sets.
and does that answer your question? And we can try to find some videos too for you. The other thing is, if you do your own graph, that's another creative opportunity. And we have a TigerGraph 101 video that I can share also that shows you exactly how to build your own type of graph. And that's where you don't use a starter kit. And that way you can do anything you want in that regard. Did that help? I'll take the silence as a no, so I'll keep talking. No, I'm kidding. Does anybody else have any other questions? And follow up with me individually if you don't want to ask now. Okay, well, we're so excited you guys are here. Good luck. And we'll follow up. Remember, you can email us with any questions and join the Discord group. So have a wonderful rest of your day. And does anybody want to join a team right now?
Hey, I had a question about the deadline extension. Like we're gonna be like moving out at the end of August, or at least I am.
Oh, okay.
So an extension would definitely be helpful.
Okay, yeah, I'll send out an email. So August 29th was what we were saying. So would it be better? Let me look at my calendar really quick. What about September 29th and give you guys an extra month? Is that something you guys want?
It's more than helpful.
Okay, then I'll do September 29th. And then does anybody not have a team that would like to join? And I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name, Chadalupatla, sorry. It was a math. I like math. I'm not great at English. Okay, I'll reach out to someone that I met at Northeastern and I'll try to get them to find you a team, okay? And I'll make sure that I take note of that, so. Great, are there any other questions? Okay, Vinay, still, I told you, I like math. Okay, well, have a great rest of your day and good luck. We'll extend it by a month and we'll follow up with all the information. And I included the link so you can send us your email for the TigerGraph Cloud credits and also the Eventbrite that gives all the information. So thanks again and have a wonderful weekend. And we look forward to talking to you. So remember, we're really active in Discord. Ask any of your questions and we're always here to help. Thanks again. Bye.